Kenneth Thomas was convicted last month of 7 crimes, including assaulting an officer. And I want to bring in now Thomas's attorney, John Pierce. He is the founder and chairman of the National Constitutional Law Union. And he's represented actually 35 January 6 defendants in addition to Kenneth Thomas. So, John, thanks for being here. First, I just want to start with this. I mean, he is awaiting sentencing, your client here. Why would a judge give him permission to attend a festival that is essentially celebrating the thing he was convicted for?
Well, I would take issue with the idea that this is, celebrating the things that he was convicted for. I would actually take some issue with the language in some of your lead up about, folks storming the Capitol. January 6th was a very complex event. There were a lot of people who engaged in various kinds of conduct. Mr. Thomas, Kenneth Joseph Thomas, was found to have not guilty of engaging in violence on the Capitol grounds.
Well, he was found guilty of assaulting a police officer.
So the statute that you're referring to actually contains multiple kinds of conduct that can be the basis for liability under it. So you could have the typical kind of assault that you're speaking of, or impeding or obstructing a police officer in their duties. And so he was found not guilty of engaging in violence on the Capitol grounds. That was a specific charge. And so we believe that the jury found that in that count that they found him guilty on, that would have been impeding or obstructing an officer, not assaulting an officer.
Look, I think the issue here, though, is January 6th. This is a festival that is about celebrating, honoring, whatever you want to describe it, the event that led to your client being convicted of multiple counts and also several of your other clients. So a judge, why would any judge in their right mind allow him to do that?
So I'd push back on you a little bit and then come back to your question. These folks are...
Can you answer my question first and then push back?
I will come right to it. These folks are not going to, I believe it's in Missouri, to celebrate any kind of armed insurrection. Nobody's been charged with insurrection. They're not going there to celebrate violence. These people are going there to pray. They're going there to have a sense of community. These people have been through an incredible ordeal. They are up against the most powerful forces on the planet with unlimited resources. They're trying to raise money so that they can pay very limited legal fees that they're able to pay. So they have some funds for commissary in prison when they're detained. They're not going there to celebrate any kind of violence. Now, we requested of Judge Friedrich, who I respect very, very much, and I hope and I think that she knows that, we requested a modification of his conditions so that he could attend. He is a minister. He wanted to go there to pray and be with this community. She denied that request, which she has the power to do. We respect her decision. We're obviously disappointed in it, but you got to remember these folks do not give up their First Amendment rights.
Well, is your client remorseful about his actions on January 6th?
I think that, as he said at trial, I think there are certain things that he wish had happened differently. But the trial laid out very clearly that he was there to have his voice be heard. He was there to protect other people. There's very clear evidence that there was excessive force by police officers, and he was trying to assist an elderly person who was being beaten by batons when he was on the ground.
Look, I have to stop you there because honestly, we watched what happened on January 6th, okay? And you can make sort of legalistic arguments about what exactly your client was convicted of and what he was not. There's no question that there was violence at the Capitol, that officers were assaulted on that day. There's no question about that. There's also no question that your client was participated in pushing back against law enforcement officers who were doing their jobs, which was protecting the Capitol that day. So we have to put that on the table. But I do want to ask you this, just you're his attorney, right? He hasn't even been sentenced yet. I don't see the sort of legal wisdom here of him asking to do this when it could aggravate potentially how he is sentenced in this case.
Kenneth Joseph Thomas, like many of my defendants, like many January 6th defendants, feel very, very strongly that to a large extent they went to Washington, D.C. that day to have their voices be heard. There was, the narrative that, with all due respect to your network, sometimes has been pushed that this was just a violent event that there was violence on both sides. There was
a
violence.
violent-
There was
No.
There was violence.
It was a violent event. Look, it was a violent event. Police officers were there
Trust
doing
me,
their
Abby.
jobs.
Abby. Some of the police officers were not doing their jobs. Some of the police officers were going way beyond doing their jobs, including unjustified lethal force. Okay, so it is.
Look,
January 6th is
listen,
not as simple.
John, a mob was attacking the Capitol. They were trying to break into the chamber. Some of them were armed. Many of them assaulted police officers to the point of permanent long-term injury. Look, I know that you have 35 clients here that you are representing in these cases. I know that in some ways, this event, which is actually also a fundraising event, would help pay for your legal bills. But at the end of the day, he was convicted for his actions on that day. He is probably, you would agree, facing jail time. So the seriousness of the crime is really not in question here. And I also don't think that it is legitimate in any way to say that just because there were a couple of people milling around, that it wasn't the objective was of that day.
That is a fundamentally that is an unfair way to carry it. The vast majority of individuals. You have to let me finish. You have to let me finish.
Look,
the vast majority. I know this stuff better than you. With all due respect, way better. The vast majority of individuals who are on the Capitol grounds were there, and they were peaceful. There were obviously.
That does not include your client.
We argued at trial that it did, and he was found not guilty. He was found not guilty. He was found not guilty of violence on the Capitol grounds. Not guilty.
He was found guilty in 7 of the counts. Do you think it's likely that he'll serve prison time for those counts?
I do think it's likely. Yes. This was the best jury verdict so far of any January 6th
Which
case.
I think says quite a lot about the seriousness of the accusations against a lot of your clients. But John, I have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us. And we have a busy show tonight.